Good, great morning to ya. It's your girl Key. I'm here. I'm about to go live on Radio Highland. And we're talking about life after lockdown, looking after yourself. If you have any questions, queries, do let me know. I'm here to be of assistance at the moment. I'm just waiting for them to ring through. So I like to record and go live as well when I do radio interviews. I don't know what about it is, but I enjoy kind of having to think on the spot, having to kind of put my ideas across to different types of people, people I may not necessarily reach in the ordinary way. Big up officially Flexitarians, how are you doing? We're going to be talking all things life after lockdown on Highland Radio shortly. I'm just waiting for them to come through. So how about you? How are you doing? How's things going for you? How's life? Are you looking forward to lockdown? Life after lockdown? Are you making plans? Are you one of these people who are booking holidays? Well, if you're booking holidays, I think we need to be really mindful about that. Because we know things can change in a heartbeat. It can all change. So I've got my team. My team here are like, Key, what about Radio Highland? It's going down. It's going down today. So just waiting for the call. Not too sure what I'm gonna say, but as you know, your girl Key is very good at speaking off the cuff. One of the challenges is, remember, as ever, I'm gonna talk about optimistic caution, because optimistic caution is essential, absolutely essential. Always on the radio. Well, sister Joanna, I have to try, I just want to reach more and more people with the things that I do, so just here waiting. We're going to be doing that via Zoom. But what about you? What does life after lockdown mean for you? Are you prepared? Are you making lots of plans? What do you look forward to? What's one of the things that you're absolutely looking forward to? Because, it's important. It gives people a sense of hope. But we also know, if we're not managing that and things change, yes, Drea, how are you? Then that can have a whole raft of problems for our self-esteem and our well-being. So, optimistic caution is what I'm encouraging people to think about. And what does optimistic caution, I guess, it sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Rolls off the tongue. Yes, Andrea, but what does it actually mean? I think optimistic caution for me is about if I think about how I'm doing it in my own life, which is probably the best possible way to give an example, it's just I'm really carrying on, just doing exactly what I've been doing, which is kind of just, getting through day to day, living day to day, which I think is very difficult for us in the West. I say this often, is that we're not used to living a day-to-day existence. We kind of associate living day-to-day with people in the third world or the developing world, which is an interesting slogan in and of itself. So just getting used to that. Here we go. The spinners are spinning.
Hello, Keeley.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Clear, brilliant. I'll be with you in a little over a minute.
No problem.
By the 19th of March 2021, the winner will be announced with me on the Jack.
Highland Radio, it's your girl Key.
It's not just that Sammy has lost his home in the conflict. It's not just that everyone he's ever loved is gone and he's been forced to walk hundreds of miles alone to find safety. And most of all, it's not just that Sammy is only 7 years old. Like thousands of children in regions torn apart by conflict, Sammy is living in fear.
So how about you? What plans, if any, are you making for life after lockdown? So I've got a minute to go. We've just connected. We're using Zoom. I might put my headphones in. Sometimes that's better for audio. And it's just a real privilege. I don't think that's working, so we're just going to do it without the headphones. Yeah.
Boer Drilling Limited are urgently seeking a labourer for immediate work on their site outside of Ballybofey. The ideal candidate needs to be over 25, have a safe pass and manual handling certificate, and a C-class.
I love Claire. Thank you, Claire. Thank you. I love Claire and Devon. Devon and Claire are helping me out, no end.
Customers for shopping local and supporting local businesses. Now more than ever, we need to support each other.
All things life after lockdown.
Now the time is 11:19. You're very welcome back to the programme. Now we're joined on it by Keeley Taverner, who is a psychotherapist, coach and author. Good morning to you, Keeley. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
Yes, and we're taking people's questions. If you have relationship questions, we're focusing on that today. Get in contact with us. What has come in the past, and I thought it might be an interesting thing to start with you, Keeley, is because of lockdown, a lot of couples are spending more time with each other. Mm-hmm. And for some, that's super because, it's allowing them to grow and to get to know each other even more, and it's hugely positive. For others, it can amplify perhaps problems that are in a relationship. It could be a controlling nature. It could be anything like that there. So is there, there's not a one-size-fits-all, but
no.
Relationships in lockdown, what's your tips?
Well, I think it's been incredibly difficult. It's spending, increased time with any one person presents its challenges as you see more of their niggles, their idiosyncrasies, in a way that maybe, when we're working, we're not as exposed. So we're all getting this concentrated time with family members, partners. And I think it's only natural that raises challenges, raises arguments, but also raises an opportunity for discussion, to connect, to talk, to try to work through things at one of the most difficult times in the history that we've come to live through. So I think we need to kind of expect that, and then be thinking about, okay, so what do we need to do? Let's talk. Are some of these issues that were there before that are now coming to the fore? I think we need to be really realistic about that.
We're also contacted by, it was the same email, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have it to hand, but they sort of were starting to think that they realised that this other person for them wasn't for them, but they loved them. Were they in love with them? Is it just a stage? Will it get better once lockdown's over? And the last person, probably before you felt like that, the first person you'd want to speak to is your partner. But in this situation, probably the last person you want to speak to is your partner. How do you work through that to find out what you want, what can be saved, what can't be saved, and how to make that, some big decisions, life-changing decisions?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with traditional relationships as such is that we often want someone to complete us, and there's kind of like a disproportionate expectation that someone else will discover wholeness, or somebody else will make us happy, and that is often, it's really not the case. And so when we realize we're not happy, or this person doesn't make me happy, that can create a whole lot of conflict. And so I'm really about what is it that we need to do for ourselves so that we complete ourselves, we pursue our passions, rather than having this kind of unconscious disproportionate expectation that my partner will fulfill me. And I think that is a really healthy way to begin to look at relationships, so that we begin to untangle that expectation and begin to think about, well, what is it that I need to do for myself? And but what does that mean for my relationship? What does that mean? Especially, the longer we're in relationships, we get more commitments, financial, maybe children, and so on and so forth. So that can be a difficult time. I think there's no...
So you say we have to be a bit, I don't want to use the word selfish because that has so many connotations with it.
Yeah.
But we have to put me before we, then, at least, to start working out where we are in a relationship.
Before we. And that's the challenge with my discipline, because we focus on the self, and we don't exist in a bubble. However, the problems with having high expectations of someone else creates a whole raft of problems, because now I think you're responsible for making me happy. Mm-hmm. So which is unhealthy. How can I do what I need to do to fulfill myself, and that we come back as a union together, and that makes us think about what do we need to do together for enjoyment, so that expectation is handled at an individual level and responsibility is taken for that, just as we want our partner to do the same, in order for us to come back with that lowered expectation of fulfillment as such. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. But you might have relationships too, though, where people are in different places. So you might have one half of the relationship, and they think everything is just could not be any better right now, you know. And then the other is sort of in that space that you're talking of, that example. How do you have that conversation with the person in Valhalla, and to sort of really, could you come to perhaps, you know, pulling the rug from under them, but then you sort of have to make sure you're good too. So how do you go about that, broaching that conversation?
Yeah, well, I think it is about communication in the relationship. What is the communication like? You know, do we avoid difficult, tricky conversations? I think that the quality, the grade of the relationship is also something to be really mindful of. So if you're kind of having a moment where, it kind of always makes me think of the film Educating Rita. There she was in a marriage, and she wanted something different. She didn't want to become a pregnant mum, like so many of her friends. So that created a lot of friction, because it just wasn't in keeping with what was expected of her or what her husband expected. So what does that mean? It means communication. Again, always goes back down to communication.
You know, and it's so interesting. So my question really, if you're in a relationship where you aren't really necessarily as happy as the other half is, you know, and they are thinking everything's great, well, then that's a problem that's been manifesting then, that you aren't conversing enough, that you've got to a stage where you're in such different places.
Most definitely.
Definitely. Right. So it's more, you got there because of the journey wasn't perhaps as it should be. A caller messaged in to say that they want to meet someone, and they're using dating sites to meet someone. And, you know, for the first week or 2 weeks, everything's going good. They're not implying that the other people they're meeting is there for the one reason or anything like that there. But then they find after 2 or 3 weeks, the other person walks out on them, or not walks out on them, but says, look, this is not for me. And now they're sort of focusing on themselves and saying, is there something wrong with me?
So the kind of popular term for that is being ghosted, where, you know, you're building a rapport and then all of a sudden that person leaves you. And that it can be very difficult. And it may mean there are things that we need to think about in terms of ourselves, because many people have an expectation of fulfillment from a relationship, which is not necessarily true. So if I meet somebody, then I'll be happy, you know. I mean, and that's one of the reasons dating sites know this, which is why there's such big business in that. You know, so when you're kind of, you know, we need to be thinking about what are we actually looking for out there in relationships, because we know the hookup culture, the friends with benefit culture is a real challenge. You know, not everybody lots of people are actually not looking for commitment. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am might be the order of the day. And if you're not clear, if you're not communicating that with somebody, and you're going along with the flow.
Let's just say it was on a social situation then. So rather than, maybe you might not want to scare them off by saying, I'm looking for something, looking for something more steady or long term, be upfront with that. And that is a filter then to get rid of these people. And if people are scared by you wanting that, well, you don't want them in your life anyway. So be frank upfront, and if they come, they come. If they don't, they don't.
Exactly, because often the challenge with dating is people are desperate. They're desperate to find somebody, because then if I find somebody, I'll be happy, right?
Yeah, which feeds into your earlier comments about looking for someone else to complete you, really.
Because we don't want to do the work on ourselves. So if I find you, then I put all the expectation on you to fulfill me. But how do I know, for example, you want to play the banjo, or that going on a round world trip is something that you've always wanted for yourself? Only you can know those deepest desires that you have for yourself. Healthy relationships is about me taking responsibility for that, and that we come together and create a union without that disproportionality of, you should fulfill me, you should fulfill me.
Right. Being at home 24/7 with my partner due to working from home is difficult sometimes. Not that there's anything seriously wrong, but I feel sometimes that I'd like my own space. How do I tell my partner this in a way that doesn't offend them, or what can be done to have some time to yourself? They're walking on eggshells at home. What do you think, Keely?
Well, I think if you're walking around on eggshells, I think some of that can be, we can sometimes, if, people do like to avoid difficult conversations. So some of that might be about, well, what do you need to think about doing to have your own space? Everybody's walking. I know I've bought my first pair of walking boots, so that you get your own downtime. We also know as we come out of lockdown, we may also be able to have different bubbles. And that's important. But fundamentally, if you're not speaking about things that you need, for example, that you need a little bit of space, and you avoid those conversations, then we know that conversation will usually happen in rage or a frustration, something blows up. So, it's about trying to be proactive and have the conversation when there isn't all the emotion about someone not putting their socks in the wash basket, for example.
I feel that lockdown has pushed myself and my partner to near separation. I know deep down that I don't want us to separate, but I feel there's no other option at the moment.
Okay. And I think that's the challenge. I mean, we know after Christmas, there's always an upsurge in divorces because we've had that concentrated time together. And the reality is the situations we've been going through have created exactly the same scenarios as your listener presents. I think maybe there might be space for time out after after lockdown to be able to kind of get a sense of what is going on at an individual level. Time away can definitely be helpful. As ever, I always encourage people, if they are in a financial position, to do so, because we know, the class class also has impacted upon our experience of lockdown. Let's be frank, it has a massive impact. So depending on your capacity, it would mean that I'd encourage people to think about whether you need to have couples therapy, something I offer and something that has been definitely on the increase because of lockdown. And not just...
And people shouldn't, I think when people see couples therapy as sort of like a sign of failure, when really what it actually is a sign of that we have something here and we want to potentially work it out. I just can imagine if someone went up to someone and said, I think we need couples therapy. The other person, well, what's wrong? Well, what, this is a negative thing. This is really, really bad. Is there that sort of, preconceived notion of such a process?
Most definitely. I think the stigma associated with my profession is really incredibly real. Whereas, people love a coach because it's regarded as being goal orientated, whereas my profession is associated with going through the past and re-traumatizing people often. Whereas actually, I help lots of people to begin to communicate, to say the difficult things that are difficult to say on our own. And so people begin to understand. Only this week, my interview with Denise Van Elton and her fiance, Eddie, went out. Before we say I do, that's us talking about, pre-marriage and having the conversation about what goes on for people. And ultimately, what's always there is our vulnerabilities.
A couple of questions before we wrap it up, Keely, and I really appreciate John. My best friend is happily married, I'll put that in inverted commas, but I know her husband is texting someone else. Should I tell her? Is texting another person acceptable as they haven't actually met? Is any real betrayal happening here?
Ooh, texting. I think it can hurt. It hurts. People do feel betrayed. And so the example is the friend knows that the partner's texting other people. Well, that raises a whole kind of conundrum about what do you do? I think maybe there's an option to have a conversation with the individual to try to ascertain, what's going on. I know this is happening, maybe, however they've found out. But it's to challenge that, because again, that's the challenge, is the expectation of fulfillment from one person. One person should fulfill me, and we're offended, obviously, if someone's having a relationship with somebody else. So it's difficult, but it also means that there's a conversation that needs to be had. And avoidance, we know, you sweep it under the rug, comes up somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real ethical dilemma.
Yeah, last one's in the same space. My husband has developed a close relationship with a female work colleague. They go for lunch together. She often sends him funny jokes or tags him in Facebook on things, and he also sends them to her. I've said several times that I don't like this, and he says it's only harmless. She is, though, an attractive girl, and when I met her, she was lovely, and said all he talks about is me. But I still feel a sense of jealousy about her. Is it unfair of me to ask him to take a step back in their friendship now? This was a fella, she wouldn't be having these emotions. But if it was a fella, the husband might not be having this sort of interaction. So I'll let you unpick that one, Keeley.
I think if anybody says that you're not allowed to have friends, I always think that that's unhealthy, actually, that you have to cease your relationship. That isn't a healthy sign. And so I'd be encouraging the individual, the female in this instance, to think about, feeling jealous. It sounds like jealousy and her own insecurities. And that I would encourage her to be thinking about, so what is that about for her? Also, obviously, trust. And the challenge is her husband, her partner, is being honest with her. But this is her own stuff. And so that might mean, what do we need to do? What do we need to look at? What do you need to look at? Because trying to restrict somebody's behavior is never, ever healthy. And that will lead to lying. So this is actually revealing.
But we are kind of humans. We are kind of animals, if you know what I'm on about. And if he is forming a friendship with this attractive woman, the partner, would she not sort of be somewhat justified that, look, if this goes on unchecked, something eventually is going to develop?
That's her stuff. That's her insecurity she's projecting onto the partner.
Right, okay.
Do you see? So the challenge is, how do you look at that? But also she's met the person, she's met the female, there's not a secret, so there's an openness. Mm-hmm. The issue is with her. And understandably, we all suffer with jealousy. It's understandable. But what does that mean for her? What about her life? What about her friends? What about her relationships? If she doesn't have that going on, then it's understandable that actually she's going to have an envy towards that kind of rapport. So I think it raises a lot in terms of, it's understandable that jealousy arises. Jealousy is always about a fear of loss. We fear we're going to lose that person. It may also be that she doesn't ever feel good enough. And if sometimes you've had a partner who's remedied that by staying home, it can be a threat.
Or she might say something and he doesn't laugh at her joke.
Exactly. Because maybe she's not funny in that. Maybe their relationship isn't built upon that. So it's very difficult. But I would always encourage people to check yourself. Look at what's going on for you, especially if someone's being honest with you. Trying to control somebody by saying you're not allowed is never a healthy sign.
Keeley, if people want to read more from you or find out more about you, where can they go on the internet or social media? So
you can find me at keyforchange.com, and all the links to my Facebook and Instagram and my YouTube channel are all there.
And I'm sorry I can't match the personality and the profile of Denise Fernand, but you'll have to just settle for this one time, right?
That's fine.
Thank you very much indeed.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Hey, all done. Whew. So I have just done an interview on Radio Highland talking about relationship dilemmas, relationship challenges in lockdown, and jealousy. I could talk about jealousy all day long. Is it right for someone to expect their partner to not have a friendship with a female friend? What do you think? I think that is also about their own security and insecurity, and it's hard. It's very difficult. I think we all get jealous, and it's easy to project. But remember, the opposite is, if you get jealous and now you tell your partner you're not allowed to be friends with that person, that is not healthy either. So we have to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, because controlling people is never, ever, ever a healthy sign. So what about you? As ever, it's your girl Keeley Taverner. I am a psychotherapist. I help people in all manner of ways, and one of the ways I'm going to be helping people tonight is on the Pain into Purpose course. If you are kind of on the fence, you're thinking about working with me and you're not too sure, you could still join us. You could still join us tonight, where I bring together all the insights from my years of experience as a helping professional. That's what Pain into Purpose is. And I think Pain into Purpose is the ultimate key to living a healthy, wholesome life, because pain happens to all of us, my people. The key is you have to learn how to make your pain purposeful. That's the secret. How do you extract life lessons, difficult life lessons from adversity? And here we are in lockdown. It's an adverse situation. No two ways about it. However, there is always an opportunity for learning and insights in adversity. What is lockdown showing you? Yes, we know all about the negative, but out of any adverse situation, there is always opportunity. I, for one, have grown the Pain into Purpose course. Lockdown gave me a chance to finally write the course that I wanted to write. So what about you? What have you taken from lockdown? What has been beneficial? We know all about the negativity. That's simple stuff. We know it because it's always being spoken about. But what have you taken from lockdown? What has been beneficial to you? Yeah. What have you begun to realize about your relationships? So some of us have realized that people who we thought are there, they're full of hot air. And you've realized you've been on your own anyway. Yeah. And that's a hard lesson. But we're grateful for that, because that might mean you need to think about what you're going to do moving forward. Hey, look at all the love here. Bravo. No, they should not. Well done. We all got friends. Exactly, Gaines. We are allowed to have friends. We need to be agreed to trust each other. Exactly. We need to trust each other. Otherwise, you get into being controlling. Controlling is never, ever healthy. I remember I was in a relationship where I was controlled. And, you know, it is a slow decline to mayhem. You know, in the end, you doubt yourself. You need their authorization. I stopped going out while they were out at every party, every dance. And then I had kids. And then that meant that I was just further and further. I felt further trapped, you know, and just ended up waiting on that individual. Not good, not good. Still, Drea, I worry about making men jealous because I have a lot of men friends. Yeah, I hear that. It is very interesting, isn't it? But if you think about it, you know, that's actually not your, you know, if we start to worry, that means, you know, I know in the past, one of the things I would do, I'd stop talking to all my men friends when I met a man. Well, because I used to meet very possessive men. And then, you know, when those relationships would break down, I'd kind of go crawling back to my friends. And that was quite embarrassing, really. Or I'd hurt people. Who actually cared about me. So one of the things I think is, you know, if we have people, you know, if we endeavoring to have people who are grounded, then, you know, that can be helpful. That can, you know, grounded in themselves, that's helpful. Because if we end up going out with someone who's highly insecure, then ultimately you're going to have to curtail your friendships in order to manage their insecurities. You see? So we have to be mindful of that. But it's a real one. It is a real one. That is my philosophy. We all need a coach. Yes, we do need a coach. But what I'm talking about, Gaines, is a discrimination between coaches and psychotherapists, because coaches are goal-orientated. There can often be a preference, you know, because it's all about the big shiny things that we want. I help people in many ways to get what they want. Oh my days. You know what? I must ask clients to send me pictures of the stuff they achieve. But I help them in a way that means we look at how our past unconsciously is messing us up in the present moment. That's the secret, and that's how I help people. But often, for good reasons, we can be frightened of going back into our past. It's your girl, Keeley Taverner. I am a psychotherapist. I've just been talking on Radio Highland about relationship challenges, relationship dynamics in this time of lockdown and what is going on for people. Raheem King, I learned to expect the unexpected with people, because people will always disappoint you But with that understanding, you'll be able to humble yourself. Raheen King, you are absolutely spot on. That is the truth. If you learn to understand that humans are fickle, we all change our mind. This is why we look back at our photographs and think, oh my God, how could I have worn that? Humans change their mind all the time. There is a value to accepting that. And then you adjust accordingly. If you can accept that rather than trying to go the other way where you're swimming upstream, it is not great for your greatness. We don't want to be swimming upstream. That's some hard ass work. Accept. And you know what? In terms of, humans disappointing us, we disappoint ourselves. Look how much times Gaines here is my PT, yeah? Look how much times I say I'm going to do my exercise. Why do you think I have a coach? I have a coach because I don't do it by myself. I disappoint myself. Yet for many of us, we go around having high expectations of others, yet we still let ourselves down. Ooh, we're getting deep this afternoon. We're getting deep. Do you think we all control the opposite? We all control the opposite. I think, do we control the opposite person? I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Do you think we all control the opposite now and then? I think we all have a tendency to be manipulative at times. There's no two ways about it. I think it's also about being conscious. For me, obviously, I've trained for years. I'm a very introspective individual. So I'm always very curious about what is going on for me. So I'm less inclined to look at that person. I'll be like, okay, when that person does this, this triggers this in me. What is that about? I have always found that a very helpful way to think about my life. And you can also find me, I write about that in my book, Why Love Hurts. So as I said, as a psychotherapist, I'm more inclined to go inwards. When that person does this, this is what is triggered in me. Always a healthier way to go, because at least I can find my answers. For many years, it's probably one of the reasons why I was depressed at one point in my life. I wouldn't say depressed, but I was in the pickles. I just kept going from in pickle situation to pickle situation. What I would say is that when I focused on why people would do that, why would they do that? And this is another thing that gets people depressed. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Why would they do that? You're looking outwards. And a lot of people ain't going to tell you the truth. So you can there hanging on, waiting. I just want an answer. I need closure. Closure is another one that keeps people depressed and sad and stuck. You want enclosure from people who've been lying to you for all of your relationships sometimes. If they've never been truthful to you, why do you think they're going to be truthful to you now? You have to learn to create closure. You have to learn to do that for yourself. That whole I need closure is another myth, which is not healthy for people. Not healthy at all. Why are we so jealous? Like I said, jealousy is about loss. And jealousy is about the fear of losing something that we value. And I think as long as when I experience my jealousy, which I believe is a healthy emotion, I don't discriminate against my emotions. I allow my emotions to be. I'm a human being, for God's sake. Allow your emotions to be. If I experience jealousy, I know that I am fearful of loss. I'm fearful that I'll lose something that is of value to me. And that, I think, is a beautiful thing. It's when I know that I've developed feelings for somebody. Know that means I've developed care for somebody. Enhanced thinking skills, you don't know. It's all about, well, I'm not even going to say the ETS, if you know, you know. Coaches are now being regulated and looking at science and the root cause also. Well, the coaching industry is unregulated industry, so anybody can call them a coach, but that's also the same for therapists, psychotherapists and counselors. It isn't a regulated industry, although we have lots of governing boards. So yeah, there is some benefit to that. But we work in very different ways. Often, as a psychotherapist, I work in the unconscious mind, and I help people in beautiful, beautiful ways. So what I'm trying to really delineate, rather than a kind of regulated or not regulated, what I'm really delineating is the importance of being able to look at our unconscious mind. It's all good and well having your goals and being future orientated. However, our unconscious material can screw us up in many ways. I myself, I'm still working on myself. I'm still working on my unconscious limiting beliefs. I'm having EMDR personally at the moment to understand some of the ways that I'm still blocking myself from an unconscious perspective. And so I find that fascinating. Humans are complex beings. At Gaines, yep, psychology is now being looked at in greater detail. Yeah, well, it should be, most definitely, because like I said, you know, one of the things that my training as a psychotherapist demanded of me is that I had 4 years of psychotherapy, you know. So one of the reasons why I can be endeavored to be grounded in myself is because I know what's my stuff and what's client stuff. If you know what the difference is, it's very helpful. But for many people, psychologists don't have to do the inner work either. Psychotherapists have to have therapy. Psychologists don't. So there's lots of things in the industry that present their own challenges. And obviously, as a psychotherapist who's had to have therapy, I have my own biases. Oof. What do they always say? The client will not go where the therapist hasn't gone, you know? So I know what it's like because I've had to sit there and go through that myself. I know that pain. I know that pain of the lump in your throat when your past traumas or things you've avoided begin to come up. I know it because I had to sit through that. Tinu Thomas, I thank you to my therapist and all the therapists I've had over the years who have helped me to look at the small and seemingly insignificant ways that I have screwed myself over and sold myself short, you know. And that's the challenge with having an inferiority complex for many of us, especially if we're from disadvantaged, marginalized group. We do have an inferiority complex, and it shows up in many ways, very many unconscious ways. I'm talking about the inferiority complex. It's serious business, all unconscious. So your girl Key knows. Raheen King, oh my God, you are hitting on everything I'm going through. Woo, closer. Raheen, you need to get on my Pain into Purpose course. I love you already. I love your flow. I love your style. I love your swagger. Official flexitarians, it's changing now. Nobody can't be a coach. You think if you've been neglected, then most people become people pleasers. If you've been neglected, are you likely to become a people pleaser? It's not always true, because we also know that, you know, hurt people. So you can also go the other way as well, which can lead to, you know, narcissism, psychopathy as well, you know, sociopath. So it can go the other way. But obviously, how we were loved as children is the blueprint for our adult lives. And if we don't deal with some of the unhealthy ways that we were loved in our younger years, then that shows up in our adult life and at our unconscious level, which is where, we have to go back to move forward, basically, is my viewpoint. We have to go back to be able to move forward. Is that drilling in the background? Joanna, that is my project manager who is changing my home. So we give thanks to the project manager, my builder chief, my chief building officer, let's call him that. You're amazing. Boundaries and limitations. Boundaries and limitations. Well, as you know what, my friend One Royalty P, as I said, I'm the psychotherapist. People could talk about boundaries and limitations all day long. Boundaries are a massive problem for people who have a guilt reflux. If you perpetually feel guilty and you try and put a boundary in place, your guilt is going to get the best of you. So I'm not all about telling people about boundaries, because for some people it's very difficult to put boundaries in place because they've been conditioned to feel guilty all of their life. So what we got to do is we got to look at where that guilt complex comes from, because guilt is the best way to control and manipulate someone. Make them feel guilty. It's your girl Keeley Taverner, psychotherapist. I'm just here doing a quick video. OMG, that's so true. I think we go out and trying to find that missing void from our childhood, where it's the lack of fatherly love or motherly love, most definitely. And the place where that shows up the most, Raheen King, is in our intimate relationship, where we go in with disproportionate expectations that that person will fulfill us. And because the expectations are so disproportionate, it's only right that that person lets us down. And often for many of us, we give away the love we've often desired. We be the love that we've desired. And often we don't get it back, which may well be a reflection of our relationship with one of our parents. That's the level, and that's where we have to go. This is the unconscious mind. This is how the unconscious mind can screw us up in the present moment. So that's why we have to go back in order to be able to move forward. Yes, root cause every time. All about the root cause royalty. Dad needs to hold off when you are doing a live. Do tell him. Joanna, I did tell him, and he's carried on regardless. What can I do? It is what it is. We give thanks. Life happens. It's your girl, Keeley Taverner. If you are considering working with me, I am doing the Pain into Purpose course tonight. Do consider signing up. If you are in a place where you're just tired of being tired and you want to do something different, you want to look into yourself, who you are, how you've come to be who you are, because we know it is serious times out here. There's no two ways about it. But from a spiritual level, let's do spirituality, because everybody's read The Secret and all they want to do is focus on the law of attraction so you can get the pretty car or the pretty house. We need to move away from materialism, my peoples. Not healthy for you. And plus, stuff goes in and out of style. And then what happens when your Gucci bag is no longer in season? Now you're really going to feel inadequate. In any adverse situations are opportunities for learning. What do you learn from adversity? What is lockdown showing you, teaching you? What do you need to address? What are your weaknesses? How do you need to empower yourself? Are you overly dependent on people and people now taking the piss with you? Now you got egg on your face. What is adversity teaching you? Let's take it spiritual. Find the lesson in adversity, and then you have to learn how to strengthen up that vulnerability within yourself. It is nobody's responsibility but yours. It's your girl, Keeley Taverner. I'm here. We're doing this. I've got my fancy top on, but underneath here, I've still got my tracksuit bottoms on. You know how it goes. It's lockdown living. It's 6 minutes to 12. I've got supervision with the wonderful Judy in 6 minutes, and your girl Key has got to be ready for that. My supervision, that's also another thing. I have supervision every week with my different supervisors. Your girl Key has 3 different supervisors. And the ambition when I have supervision, what we talk about is I talk about my clients and I talk about what's going on for me personally as well. So I bring my own self into there. I talk about, what areas of my practice do I want to strengthen. So we also know this week is Eating Disorders Week. And that has been something that I've also been focused on. I'm also, Eating Disorders Week this week is also focused on the challenge of binge eating. Binge eating is another emotional aspect of our behavior. Binge eating is always emotional. So we have to go back to be able to move forward. Remember, for any of you guys out there who are doing the famine, who are, limiting all your food and clean eating, with any famine, there will be a feast. So be mindful. Be mindful. For anyone suffering with any eating disorders, we also know the mind chatter about food is another thing that is a factor that you need to address. This constant preoccupation with food. I am fascinated in the human condition, and wherever it takes me, if it means I'm looking at food, looking at narcissism, I just want to help lots of people. I've often been criticized. Keeley, you need to specialize. Focus on one thing. Focus on one thing. How can I focus on one thing when I just love the human condition? I find humans absolutely fascinating. So it's your girl Key. I've got 4 minutes as I prepare for supervision with the great Judy Harrison, where I will be talking about my journey, my clients, what support I may need, where I want to expand and grow into. It's a space for me. And that's another factor. As a psychotherapist, we are required to have supervision, which is not always the same for coaches. There may not be a requirement, but it's also incredibly helpful for any helping professional, I believe, to have supervision. So I also supervise solicitors as well, because they also need to be able to offload, to make sense of the challenges that they have in supporting people. It's your girl, Keeley Taverner. I'm here to be of help to people, to be of assistance. People often seek me out when they've gone to the mainstream places and they've not had the joy or the results that they've hoped for. So they come to me to seek an alternative. That's one of the reasons why I work privately. It's one of the reasons why when I was in the system, sometimes I really just didn't fit in, because because I always thought differently. So I was one of those outliers, and for many years I kind of thought there was like, why don't I think like everybody else? And actually my training as a psychotherapist encouraged me to just continue to embrace my authenticity. And I'm a firm believer that if you are inauthentic and you do not discover your own authenticity, it's only a matter of time before you become depressed and sad. For many of us, we do not say yes to ourselves, but you gladly say yes to this person, yes to that person, or someone you're in love with. You go above and beyond. Yet when it comes to you, you don't want to do it. This is why so many people are like, oh, Key, I want to do your course. I want to do your course. But you won't take your money and pay for it. You won't take your money and pay for it because you have a block when it comes to doing things for you. Yet you go above and beyond in your careers for all these agencies and big companies. You do it for your lovers and your partners, yet you can't do it for you. What is that all about? And you think self-care is about getting your nails done or buying yourself a new blouse? We got to upgrade. I'm sorry, I'm here to be real with you people, because it's real out here in these sticky times. And if you don't learn how to be your own best friend, then you're going to be your own worst enemy. And you're going to sit there blaming everybody else. If you come to see Keeley, you're not going to do that with me. No way, sorry. I'm not sitting in your pity party where you're crying about XYZ. I'm going to leave you. I'm going to let you do your little thing. Maybe session 1, let you cry, let you get it out. But don't worry, I'm listening. I'm listening, and then I'm going to hold up the mirror so you can see you and what you do that contributes to your situation. We keep it ultra real around here because fake ain't great. Here she go, Keeley Taverner, going live. 1 minute. I better get ready for Judy, otherwise she'll tell me off. You better know your place. Here she go, Key. Do take care of you as ever. Go to my website, keyforchange.com. If anything I says has resonated with you and you need to have a little conversation, you got some dilemmas you're going through and it's getting the best of you, the people are just confusing you, I get it. I understand it. There is a lot that I've heard. Trust me. There ain't a lot that surprises me. Humans are very fascinating, but don't go for it alone. Do not go for it alone. That is self-harm. Do take care of you, because if you don't, no one is coming to save you. You have to learn to be your own best friend. Now that's the truth.